To wrap up today's presentation, we're going to bring it back to what we're all here for. This is the Land Investment Expo. Our final speaker today is Dr. Mark Dotzour. He was the chief economist at the Texas A&M Real Estate School. He is one of the most well-regarded, well-renowned real estate economists in the country. He's spoken to about 250,000 people over the years. He has had writings appear in journals whose names you might recognize, such as the Wall Street Journal. And he's got a PhD in finance and real estate from the University of Texas at Austin. And he is here today to talk to us, well, clear sailing ahead. Let's get the good news. Come on up, Dr. Dotzour.
Great. Thank you. Hi. Thank you. Howdy. Well, it's great to be with you. I'm going to step over here because I just finished this program about 2 hours ago, and so I don't have it all memorized. I'm pretty sure it's pretty good. I liked it when I put it together. It's fun to be with you. I think the first time I was here in 2012, I'm having some flashbacks to about 2010, maybe 9 and 10, when people started coming up to me after presentations and asking me about buying gold. Hey, man, I need to buy gold because the government's going to print $4 trillion and dollars not going to be the U.S. reserve currency anymore. And by the way, how much ammunition do you need per ounce of gold to protect it? And at that point in time, I said, you know, my recommendation is if you're even thinking about gold, I'd just recommend you take cocaine because at least you feel good before it kills you. You should have seen the dean's mouth the first time he sat in a meeting and said that. So at one point I used to have to say that's not an official position at Texas A&M University, but I don't work there anymore, so I don't care what their official position is on anything. So as I've been watching Bitcoin, I haven't paid attention to it ever until 2 weeks ago, when enough of my clients start asking me about Bitcoin or tax or whatever it is. After a while, if enough clients ask me about it, I think, well, I can't just, I got to do some homework too. So I don't purport to be a Bitcoin expert, and I don't plan to become one either. But based on what I've heard now, I'm thinking, you know, if you have an alternative of buying Bitcoin or getting an opioid addiction, I'd recommend you go ahead and buy some Bitcoin. Good luck. Good luck with it. Read about it. Read about it. Yeah, seriously, the blockchain thing is cool. There's no doubt about that. That's going to change a lot of stuff. But these Bitcoins are just a pig in a poke as far as I'm concerned. The reason is that whenever you got some kind of market where there's an infinite supply, it's hard to keep a high value for very long when you already got 20 alternative Bitcoins now. Bitcoin's just it's Wrigley chewing gum rather than Sparky's chewing gum or something like that. There's all kinds of chewing gum out there, and there's no limit to there's no copyright law on developing the next chewing gum either. It's open source technology, so do your own. If you're Betty, call Bettycoin. You might as well. And just be careful on the exchanges where you buy and sell them, because that's where they get stolen too. You might want to look into Bitcoin stolen Google for fun too. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm just not very optimistic about Bitcoin particularly. Cryptocurrency may be a good idea. At some point you won't have, here's the metaphor that came to my mind about this, and I'm going to move on because this is a total waste of time as far as I'm concerned. But I can just see how you're all going, oh, I just bought 10 of it. When I'd say that deal about gold, people would laugh for a while, and then about 2 years later I'd say it somewhere and only half the room would laugh, and the others would go, Bill, I told you were an idiot to buy that gold. So I can kind of tell not enough of you are laughing that you either think about it or you did. And that's fine, power to you. Like I said, compared to opioid addiction, it's probably a better way to spend some time. And let me also tell you who really likes it a lot are criminals. These are people that really enjoy it. When you got a whole bunch of money in a country like China or Russia, and the government has put the hammer down that you can't get money out of our country because we got currency controls, and you've just stolen a whole bunch of money from people and you want to get it out of the country before they get you, well, using Bitcoin is a perfect way to do it because it's anonymous. You can't trace it. I don't know how that works. That's one of those conundrums like Alan Greenspan would have said about the Federal Reserve. This is a conundrum to me about how a criminal can hide moving money from one country into, say, Victoria, Canada, and buying a $2 million house that was really worth about $1 million, but they don't care because they just want to get the money. How can you do that, be anonymous, and at the same time, every one of these Bitcoins is, you can tell where they are. So I'm not quite sure. You got to be a super genius at that, but I'm just telling you, try this on for size, just for fun, and watch every time the Chinese government or the Japanese government or the Korean government says anything about limiting Bitcoin use, and watch what happens to the value of Bitcoin within about 8 nanoseconds. I'm just telling you. So anyhow, that's enough of that. The blockchain is super cool. I don't have any question about that. Before I was thinking about Bitcoin, I was like super animated and enthusiastic. I'm not by nature super animated and enthusiastic. I'm not a pessimist, and I try not to be an optimist. I try just to be a pragmatist. I don't have anything to sell. You know why I'm here? I'm here to try to share some information I've got to hopefully help you make good business decisions. That's pretty much it. I don't have any books to sell. I don't want you to email me and tell me about your kids or any of that kind of stuff. I know you don't want to know about my kids either, so let's just call it spades. Who cares, right? That's fine. I'm here to share information, and hopefully it'll help you add value. And if Bitcoin is $4 billion a year from now, you can call me just like the people when gold went to $1,900 an ounce, calling, hey, Mark, how's your cocaine working out? And then when it fell by 50%, it's back to $1,200, $1,300. But anyhow, we'll see. I'm not a genius. I'm an economist. That means there's a 50% chance everything I say is wrong, all right? Steve knows this. He's had me here several times, and I've told him you can get Alan Greenspan here for $500,000, but his odds of being right aren't any better than mine. He's an economist too. Why I'm giddy and euphoric is because I thought a year ago, if I had been here a year ago, the title was Playing Ball in the Later Innings. I felt like, because people, you were asking me, clients were asking me all over, hey, what inning we in? Well, what that means is if you're a capitalist, and fortunately in this country we still are capitalists, what that means is how long do we have before we have another recession? And so when enough clients asked me that, I thought I better do my best to precisely answer that as possible. I thought we were in the 7th inning or so. That's probably 18 months ago. And so all of a sudden we have this election. And how many of you in this room have actually heard me speak? I need to know. Okay, quite a few. But there's a lot that haven't. So I need to explain it. And we're on video, and so I'm going to try to just stay here. I apologize to y'all over here. I can't see this, and I don't know what I'm saying, okay? So I'm going to have to do this today, all right? And now I forgot what I was getting ready to say. We'll get with it in a minute. Clear sailing ahead. Oh, politics. Thank goodness it's not the month before the election or the 2 months afterwards, because what you need to know about me is I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm a registered cynic. I don't like any of them, okay? I'm not one. We had a chance to vote in Texas for president, and I was grateful there was 3 names on it, and the name I voted for was somebody named Gary that I don't even know who their last name was. I was hoping Pee Wee Herman would have been on there, or Mickey Mouse, because at least I know what their policies are. But I chose Gary. The reason I'm telling you this is because I'm going to say some things about government policy. I'm sorry. You okay with this if I walk a little bit? Okay. I can't help it. I got to go around a little bit. And so, anyhow, why I'm saying that is I'm actually going to say something nice about Donald Trump, and I know that's illegal in 39 states, okay? But I'm telling you, please, I'm a business economist. I'm not a politician. I can't stand the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I wish they would get rid of all of them. They're a hindrance to the future growth of our country. And as far as I'm concerned, when people say, what about the government shutdown? Isn't it going to be terrible? I go, hey, that'd be the best thing that ever happened. They ought to shut it down and then never reopen it and send all the money back to the governors and mayors who actually know what to do with the money. So, but the fact of the matter is, I'm warning you, I'm going to say something positive about Donald Trump, and I know people don't like that, okay? That's cool with me. I don't like Donald Trump. I think he does some of the stupidest things I've ever seen. But I'm a business economist, and I'm looking at his tweets to Arnold Schwarzenegger are irrelevant to me. They're irrelevant to a businessman or woman. So I'm speaking to you that way. If you can switch off the politics for just a while. You've had a few politicians in here today, so I'm guessing you might be all ginned up about it again. I'm not, okay? I'm interested in trying to figure out how to make a business decision in the environment we live in, and so with that said, that's why I'm giddy and euphoric, because my clients are, and all of them are. I was surprised. The day after the election happened, the business community around this country, and I don't just speak in Brownwood, Texas. I'm in Charleston, I'm in Las Vegas, I'm in Miami. I'm talking about the first couple of weeks after the election. I'm in blue states all over the place, as well as red ones. And I met nothing but 100% euphoria the day after that election in the business community. And if you're in the business community in this state, I guarantee you there was a whole bunch of people here that were euphoric about it too. And it surprised me. I'm 63 years old. I don't get surprised a whole lot anymore. But it surprised me because I was watching TV a little bit. I don't waste much time watching TV either. But with all the bad news that you just are constantly bombarded with on TV, I was shocked to see the business euphoria all of last year, no matter where I went. I mean, it's like 100%. We're excited about what's going on because we're excited to get out from under heavy-handed government regulation. Everybody in this country and every state in this country is sick of people from Washington, D.C. acting like they know what to do. And so the business community was just on fire. And so bottom line, I'm going to say this and then that'll be about it for Trump, because like I said, there's not much good to talk about him, but sometimes you can do good things just by accident, all right? And if you want to see for yourself, let me tell you something I told university students the other day. If you're watching Fox News or MSNBC more than 7 minutes a day, not only are you wasting your time, but you're causing yourself emotional damage in the process. And it's worse than that now. I've modified that message now because the misinformation that I've been seeing coming through those media compared to what I see talking to real men and women in business was like night and day. And I was telling those students, you got to be careful. You watch Wolf Blitzer on CNN and you think the world's coming to an end, and then you talk to 100 businessmen and women and they're absolutely on fire right now. So if you let these national media people influence your outlook and your attitude and your advice to customers, you're in jeopardy of making bad decisions for them. So just be careful. These young people are pretty smart. I like going there. I do it once a year just for a friend of mine. I teach for an hour and a half for one night for his class, and one of the kids asked me, so how do you stay current? I don't trust any of them. Wall Street, well, New York Times, forget it. Los Angeles Times, forget it. ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, forget it. NPR, I don't like NPR either. They're all biased. And so these young kids asked me, so how do you stay informed? I said, well, in my mind, as a business person, I can do it easy. I do this all the time. My audience is always way smarter than me. When it comes to your business, you're way smarter than me. Next week, I'm going to be in another 3 different speeches. Those people are going to be smarter than me too. I have to try to stay on the top of my game to even show up at something like that. In fact, I spoke at Hillwood Properties in North Fort Worth a couple of weeks ago, and Ross Perot Jr. is the guy that owns that. And I saw Trump's speech this morning. Trust me, I am not pro-Trump. Just back off a second if you're getting nervous about that, all right? But I'm telling you something, just from my point of view, as a cynical person that cannot stand Washington politicians at all, I watched every second of the speech he gave at Davos this morning, and I was stunned at how good it was. I thought, man, this is amazing. All he's doing is telling the world the United States is open for business. We want you to come here. We want to do business with you, and we want trade with you and you and you, but we'd like for it to be, his word was reciprocal. And you know, is there anything wrong with us getting jobs too? And people say, well, when you talk about the media and you talk about trade, you sound an awful lot like a political candidate we know. And I'll tell you this, I've been talking about these kind of things years before Donald Trump was even on the Celebrity Apprentice. The only reason you're hearing about it now is because he's the only politician that had guts to actually say anything about it. So anyhow, if you want to feel kind of uplifted, if you can kind of forget about who he is and just see what the guy that's trying to get business to the United States of America is trying to do, I personally was really uplifted. I thought, this is the best speech I've heard since Reagan in terms of a president trying to contribute to economic growth in America. And after that, I thought that, and I'm thinking, well, was that like Reagan or was that better than Reagan? So make your own call on it and see. And if you listen to it and go, what kind of pot were you smoking, man? Email Steve, and then he'll forward it to me. It'll only be 1 or 2 email. Nobody else is going to care. I'm serious. If you think I'm totally wrong, I'd like to know about it, because I'm not interested in being biased. Last thing I'm interested in doing is selling a Republican Party on anything, to anybody. And so I'm just pretty excited. I thought we were in the 7th or 8th inning, but that was before we got these tax cuts. I missed something. I said 50-50 chance I'm right. That's pretty accurate. And I'll tell you the one thing I missed big in the last 15 years was that they would get tax reform. All of last year, I was going everywhere around the country, talking about 18,000 people, saying there's 0 chance of tax reform. Not going to happen. Because no congressman from New York or from California is going to vote to get rid of state and local income tax deductions. That's just not supposed to happen. That didn't happen when Reagan was in office. They didn't get that done. I would have never in a million years thought that the people that represent the state of California in the House and the Senate would have said, it's okay, we're cool with it, make it happen. So that is a game changer. This tax reform thing is a game changer. People don't even know how big of a game changer it is yet because the accountant's not even sure what's all in there. But I'm just telling you, it's okay to be enthusiastic. If you're a Republican, you've been negative for 8 years because you don't want to give Barack Obama credit for anything. And if you're a Democrat, you're going to be negative for the next however long it lasts because you don't want to give Donald Trump credit for anything either. That's okay. Have your personal opinions about it. Just don't let that stain your business decisions. That's the only thing I'm talking about here. It's the only reason I'm wasting your time with this, because the media, that's all they want to do to you is distort, to make you mad, so you'll call again. Wall Street Journal, Reuters. Those two is all I need. I can stay totally apprised of everything with simply the Wall Street Journal and Reuters. Get your dictionary out and look up the words propaganda and gossip and news. 3, get the 3 definitions, and then look at CNN's news feed that comes out. I'll just pick on them because I watch them all. I need to know all of it because people ask me questions. I'm trying to figure out where are you even coming from about this. And just take a CNN news feed and rank them. News, propaganda, gossip. And just start evaluating everything you hear in the news. I don't even want to know about, read about it. You don't need to have a TV person tell you, well, we brought in Smarty Pants here to tell you what he just said. I mean, it's a 3-minute speech, and my wife would say, I heard it, dude. I don't need your opinion on it. The U.S. Index of Leading Indicators is showing no signs of weakening of the economy yet. In addition to that, this is what people are kind of nervous about, was the fact that The longest economic expansion we've had since World War II lasted for 120 months. That's when Clinton was in office. Now, we're in month 103, as we sit here today. So that's why people are saying, I think we got to be near the end of a cycle. Because you look at these numbers. We're getting near the end of the cycle. That means we're going to have a recession in a year or two. I would have said yes until the tax reform happened. Tax reform, in my opinion, and again, 50-50 chance, I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. Tax reform to me might have added 3 or 4 years to this. And let me tell you why. Read some history. I had another kid, a young woman, a 30-year-old woman in a classroom, night before last, she goes, how do we balance watching news with reading history about stuff in America? And then I thought, God, what $1 million question that is. And my answer to that was, you can skip watching the news because it's not news anyhow. And let me show you what I just read recently that I didn't know about. I'm embarrassed. I really wish that I knew everything about everything. That would be my goal. I hate to let this little secret out, but PhDs don't know everything about everything. That's a secret that we have within the business, so don't let that cat out of the bag. But the fact of the matter is, I just read recently that the Kennedy tax cut, a lot of us might have known that John F. Kennedy cut taxes in about 1961 or 62. I forgot that number right at this point, but it doesn't matter. And we weren't at the bottom of a depression. We were kind of moving along pretty good, and then here comes a tax cut, and you know what happened? That was 61 or 62. And we didn't have a recession after that till 69, and that was done on purpose because the Federal Reserve decided this has gone on long enough, and Lyndon Johnson was spending money in Vietnam that he wasn't even telling anybody about, and inflation started to get out of hand, and the Fed ended that. So I'm looking at the last time we had a major tax reform at the top of an economic cycle, and I'm expecting maybe it doesn't last very long. Clear out to 1969. As I sit here today, based on what I have read about that early 1960s tax cut, and what I saw Donald Trump talking today on TV, I am more euphoric about the future of this economic cycle than I have ever been today. I'm sure maybe by tomorrow I'll feel bad and say, oh. But I'm just telling you right now, it's good. It's fun to be in a country. This is what it feels like to be at the top of an economic cycle. If you're in business, this is what it's like. This is at a peak. When cycles peak, it doesn't mean they have to go down immediately the next day. It just means we're operating at a very high level. It's really cool, I think. People say, well, how long will this last? And my answer is, as long as 100,000 or 200,000 people get a job every month. These numbers are all available through the Federal Reserve's website, St. Louis Federal Reserve's website. But every month, somewhere between 100 and 250,000 people get a job. As long as we keep creating jobs like that, this cycle will go on. Cycles don't end just because it's long or it's been a while. They end when people finally stop hiring, and that's not happening. And now look what's happened. I can't figure this out either. Have you ever seen this in your life? Where you have an election and then you just have company after company after company come out and say, we're going to hire 10,000 people. We're going to hire 4,000 people. I've never seen anything like it. I'm trying to figure out, how is this happening? I mean, is he calling them and saying, hey, I know something that you said and you need to hire some jobs. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but it's unprecedented in my lifetime. It's just a great time right now. It's crazy. Okay, the rate of growth in job creation is slowing down a little bit. And that's what this slide is. And I put 3 red little lines in there to show you that, see those gray bars coming down? Those are recessions. And those little red lines there is when job growth gets down to 1%. I look at that chart and I go, hey, I see what I see happening here. As long as job growth is above 1%, we're in good shape. When job growth slows down to that point, history shows us we have recessions. That's not happening right now. Be careful about what you watch in the news. That last man was from MIT, right? This is pure coincidence. I've had this in my slides now for like 2 months. But this is kind of, I'm going to fit this one in the propaganda category, because just as an example of how you got to be careful as an individual listening to what you hear on TV, because it can be wrong. This was a day or two before the election. This nice person from MIT comes out and goes, hey, investors in stock market currently regard a Trump presidency as a relatively low probability. But while the precise consequences of bad policies are always hard to predict, if investors are wrong and Trump wins, we should expect a big markdown in expected future earnings for a wide range of stocks and a likely crash in the broader market. Why would some management professor at a famous university come out a day before an election and make a prognostication on something that's not even in his discipline? I call that propaganda. And it's fine. It's legal. You can do this in America. We have free speech. I'm just warning you, as a consumer of news, that you better be careful, because a bunch of what you're seeing is nothing but gossip and propaganda. The interesting part of this is what happened after the election. I went to bed at 10:30. I didn't care. I could tell it was over. I didn't need to stay up till 3. And so I went to bed at 10:30. Well, a whole bunch of millennials didn't. A whole bunch of people must have heard about that prognostication about the market collapsing, because during the middle of the night, the Dow futures dropped by 900 points. Here's a tip for you today. If you ever think about trading stocks in the middle of the night in your pajamas, just never do it. Nothing good comes out of it, okay? By the time the market closed at the end of that day, it was back up to somebody in the middle of the night lost 900 points. And that's okay. It's a free country. It's good. Just be careful. Consumer confidence is off the chart again. And it exploded when? The day after the election. Like it or not, doesn't matter. What I like doesn't matter either. Just telling you, what you really want to do as a businessman or woman is like facts. And then just go with it. What you don't want to do, well, that's good enough. Consumers are spending money, they're getting jobs, and that's what creates growth in this country. Household net worth is close to $100 trillion. Don't let people make you nervous that China might get mad at us and not buy our bonds, and we'll have a lot of trouble that way. China only owns about $1.5 trillion of our bonds. Your net worth is almost $100 trillion. If I had a problem with that and I was president, I'd be president about 4 days. I wouldn't have to get impeached. I'd quit before then. But it'd be a fun 4 days. And China gives me some fits about, hey, you can't do this because we won't buy your bonds. I would just get on the phone that night and say, hey, y'all got $100 trillion in your desk. Just dig out your petty cash out of the gumball machine and come up with $1.5 trillion so we can buy these bonds and not have this discussion ever again. That's what the media will do to you. It's like, oh my goodness, the Chinese own $1.5 trillion, and Trump is getting us in trouble, or Obama's getting us in trouble. We have to be really careful with the Chinese. No, we don't. We have to be nice to people. Being nice to people doesn't mean you have to give away all your jobs. It just means, wouldn't it be nice if you get some jobs and we get some jobs? That would be awesome. So when people are rich and they feel like they're getting richer and they're getting jobs and they're getting pay raises, that's why the economy is absolutely on fire. That's exactly what capitalism does when it's working properly and people are getting jobs, they're getting pay raises, and they're buying stuff. And that's why we're at the top of a market. Small business is the percent of them saying, I'm going to hire in the next 3 months, exploded. Look, how about this one? This is the National Federation of Independent Businesses simple survey question. Is now a good time to expand? I was on with the chief economist of the National Association of Realtors a couple weeks ago, and he made a comment about, well, it seems to us in Washington that there has been a noted increase in business enthusiasm. I got up after that, and I showed this slide. I said, I don't see a noted increase here. I see an explosion, pal. And I see an explosion, and it was the day after the election. So you've got consumer confidence that went through the roof. You got business confidence that went through the roof. And meanwhile, on CNN and everywhere else, they're just saying, oh, this country's in shambles. Just be careful. Don't make business decisions based on TV at all. It's fun to watch, I guess, but don't make decisions. Big companies going to hire 6 million jobs open right now. Last year it was 5 million. Year before that it was 4 million. Back when Wolf Blitzer was telling you how woe is us, and there's nobody can't get jobs in this country, there was 4 million jobs open then. Here's my question, the what could go wrong question is, what could go wrong is that we create so many jobs, there's nobody to work it. That's the big issue in my mind as I sit here right now tonight, based on what I've just tried to outline for you. The biggest risk to this economy is that we get a massive labor shortage in this country. You then have somebody, watch it, the first introduction to this is going to be UPS. The truck drivers for UPS, they're going to be coming up for a vote here pretty soon. And so if you get a strike there and you get a lot of wage increases, that's my biggest thought of risk is higher inflation because we just don't have enough workers. Unemployment is low. So with that said, let me outline 5 things that could go wrong. I don't think any of these are going to happen, but they're possible. And if they don't, then we're just lights out pretty much like we have been for this next year and next several years. Interest rates go up too fast, okay? 2 things. Number 1, short-term interest rates could go up. What I mean by that is the Federal Reserve raises interest rates too fast. And the first problem they have with that is they raise them too fast and then they break something. And what that is the stock market. Because they read their history just like I do. And what they want to raise rates but not too fast because they don't want to repeat Black Monday of 1987. What happened there? They raised rates about 6 times in 1 year in 87. Not only just quarter points, but some half-point bombers in there along with it. And then they made their last raise in September, and then in October, on one day, the Dow fell 22%. With today's market, that means you'd wake up tomorrow and read the Des Moines newspaper, and the headline would be, Dow falls 5,500 points yesterday. The Fed did that. It was their fault. They didn't do it on purpose. They were wanting to raise rates, and they overcooked it, and they broke something. That's why they're slow this time. We'll raise it a quarter and look over our shoulder, see how the market does. Then a month later, well, let's talk about raising another quarter, see how the market does. Talk about it, raise it. Talk about it, raise it. That's what they've been doing, trying to do since December of 2015. And that's what they're going to keep trying to do. Talk about it and then raise it. From what I can gather, they'd like to get that Fed funds rate up where it's at a 1.5%. They'd like to get it up to maybe 2.5%. If they could do that overnight, just raise it, they probably would. But they don't want to have this happen either. The other thing that they could do, I'm not even going to bother with that. Just so you'll have the due reverence that's needed and necessary for not only TV commentators, but also Federal Reserve people themselves. This is Sir Leslie O'Brien, the head of the Bank of England in 1966. He was defending the British pound like a day or two before they devalued it. And a quote in the book was, "A major duty of every central banker is to learn how to exude confidence without positively lying." I read you want to find out what the Fed really does, read their memoirs after they get out of office. Don't listen to what they're saying because they're never going to tell you anything other than very positive things. And this comment too, when I mentioned about economists being 50-50, this was one of my favorites of Greenspan. He did have a sense of humor. The fact that our econometric models at the Fed, the best in the world, have been wrong for 14 straight quarters doesn't mean they might not be right in the 15th quarter, okay? You see, you guys think I'm making this all up, right? I'm just telling you the quality of the information that you can get. This guy is smart. Jim Bullard just came out and said, I'm worried that the Fed will invert the yield curve. What does that mean? Does it make sense to you that if you went to invest in a one-day treasury bond, that the interest rate should be pretty low? And that if you invest in a 10-year treasury bond, that interest rate should be higher? That's called normal, all right? Inverted yield curve is a situation where the one-day treasury bond gets higher than the 10-year treasury. That's how the Fed causes a recession. Here's a chart. I just built this today for you. The blue lines in there are the Fed funds rate. That's that one-day rate. That's what Janet Yellen and now Jay Powell do. And the red line is the 10-year treasury. I have circled the few times in history where that one-day rate is higher than the 10-year treasury. And I'll just call to your attention there, do you notice those gray bars coming down? Those are the recessions. Do you notice how there's a gray bar after every one of those circles that I've shown you there? That's all that Jay Powell is mentioning is, or Bullard was mentioning is, we don't want to do that. The good news is, if they're talking about it, they're not going to do it. So I'm okay. I'm not worried about that. The other part of this is, do we get inflation in this country? And for those of you that bought gold at $1,900 and you still own it, you're saying, is there still hope for me for runaway inflation? The answer is there's more hope now than there was for the last 5 or 6 years. But the fact of the matter is, those interest rates on inflation, they don't go up just because they want to. The actual inflation in this country is absolutely deadlocked at around 2%, and it's been there for a long time. And this is a survey of really smart people. I'm not on it, but there's a survey of really smart people about what's your expectation of future inflation. Do you see it going up here? I don't. It's going down. So most of the world thinks that inflation in the United States is going to continue to go down. Even today, even with full employment. So what could make inflation go up? Here's the bad scenario for me, is that we have some kind of gigantic oil shock that causes oil to go up to $100 or $120 a barrel and then stay there for a while. That's the last time we had real inflation in this country. It was in 1970s when 1971 or 2, Muammar Gaddafi said, hey, price of oil is going from $1 to $4 a barrel. And then about 5 years later, the Ayatollah overthrows the Shah and the oil goes up to $40 a barrel. That's the last time we've had real inflation in this country. So the only thing I can see how we actually get inflation in this country is if oil were to go up. And so then I start asking myself, is it possible oil could go up? And I'm thinking, not really, because the price of oil gets up where it is today, people start drilling it in America anymore. $65 a barrel right now today is enough to get all kinds of oil fields in this country fully lit up again. But what happens if you have a problem? 3 problems I see out there. They're all related to Saudi Arabia, Iran, and then Saudi Arabia and Iran together. Number 1, the new crown prince of Saudi Arabia has found out that if he says, I'm going to declare it's an act of war, the price of oil goes up. I mean, here's the dates. July 30th, Saudi Foreign Minister, Qatar's call to internationalize holy sites is an act of war. That was last July. Then in November, Saudi Arabia accuses Iran of an act of war against the kingdom. And then in November, about the same day, Saudi Arabia says Lebanon declares war. Every time the Saudi prince utters the phrase, could be, or declares an act of war, the price of oil has gone up $5. I mean, that guy could have it up to $90 if he'd just declare war one day at a time on a whole bunch of people. And it's cheap. That's a cheap way to get oil up, is just to say something and have it go up. A civil war in Saudi Arabia is a different issue. They got a big problem there. They're going bankrupt. Don't believe me? Google it yourself. International Monetary Fund, Saudi Arabia bankruptcy. You can get the whole story. Bottom line is they need $80 or $90 a barrel to pay their bills and their welfare payments. And they're not getting $80, $90 a barrel. And after a while, you start running out of money. And the IMF said, you're going to be bankrupt within 5 years if you don't do something about it. What happens when your government starts running out of money? What do you think they do for welfare benefits and government pensions and stuff like that? They do just like anybody else. And so what happens is, on January 1st, just a couple of weeks ago, Saudi Arabia announces a VAT tax for the first time in the Gulf. That's a 5% sales tax. So you just wake up tomorrow and go, how'd you like if you woke up tomorrow and go, wow, Donald Trump just raised our sales tax to 5% and we have to pay it. We're not happy about that. We don't like it. On that same day, the Saudi government doubled the price of your gasoline too. They subsidized the smithereens out of that. You're Saudi citizens, you use more gas per capita than anybody on earth because it's dirt cheap. And so overnight, you wake up and there's a 5% tax on everything, and the price of your gasoline just doubled overnight. Those are the kinds of things that start civil wars like happened in Egypt back a few years ago. And then this just kind of came up out of nowhere. Iran also got people in the streets. Apparently they're mad because they think we should have some more jobs over here. As much money as they're bringing in from oil revenue, it doesn't appear to be making its way down to the citizens. So you got people out on the streets there. So there's a lot going on over there right now. I don't anticipate this, but these are the kinds of things that can happen to cause a war in the Middle East. And then let me see if I got this picture here. This is when oil goes to $100 or $120 a barrel. That guy down there in the bottom with the white hat, that guy is like one of my heroes of all time. He's not alive anymore. His name's Red Adair. And Red Adair was the one guy that could put out an oil and gas fire. Well, they set every oil and gas well on fire over there, and he was about the only person that knew how to put them out. But that's what the price of oil does when things go crazy. So I'm just watching that. These are simmering out there. These are things, Saudi Arabia and Iran simmering out here, not boiling, but simmering. And so just keep an eye on that, because as long as nothing happens there and the price of oil doesn't go up much north of $75 a barrel, I'm surprised it's this high already, then I'm back to my first slide. Clear sailing ahead. Lots of reason to be very optimistic in this country, and the only way it can derail is if we get some kind of runaway inflation that causes interest rates to go up, which we don't want to see happen. So with that said, let me open it up for a little bit of Q&A if you're in favor of it. They tell me there's nothing more dangerous besides getting between a cow and a calf, and that is getting between a city manager and a form of tax revenue, or getting between an audience at the end of the day and an open bar that's on the other side of the door. So if you're standing by the door, it's your own risk. I'd be real careful. You three right there, when the stampede goes, just be flexible, all right? Be nimble. Anybody got a question? Yeah, his question was, how can countries sell 100-year bonds at really low interest rates? And the question is, are they crazy or not? The answer could be one of two things. Number one, it could be that the governments themselves are buying those bonds through quantitative easing. That would be my first guess, is that the government's buying those, all of it. Anyhow, there is no people buying them. And the other thing is, it could be that they're just that desperate. They don't want to own stock. They don't want to own Bitcoin. And it's just like, you know what? I'll take it. It'd be like somebody buying farmland at a very high price. I mean, a couple years ago, people were happy to pay super high prices for farmland with yields that were really low, and they knew it. And they did it anyhow, simply because they turned up their nose at every other option and said, I don't want it. It's just a sign of people desperately looking for something that they can count on. Yeah, great question. Yes, hi, go ahead. So what's going to happen to NAFTA? Who knows? Donald Trump, I read his book. I don't know him personally. I read Janet Yellen's book, because when she became head of the Federal Reserve, I thought I needed to know about her. I did the same thing with Donald Trump. The guy's a great negotiator. And so when a negotiator comes to you, there's a lawyer here in the room, I don't remember who it was, but asked me about something like that. I said, hey, as a real estate lawyer, I bet you've done a little negotiation, right? Oh, yeah. Is your client's first offer always the highest one that they're going with the most favorable terms? And so all I see on all this stuff is a genius negotiator. He's an idiot on other things, all right? I don't have a problem with that. You know, I can appreciate genius in people and acknowledge their idiocy too at the same time. And if the guy was a total idiot on economics, I probably wouldn't even talk about it all. I'd just say, hey, we got another one that's another idiot, okay? So don't worry about it. I'm not even going to waste my energy talking about it. But I see a guy going to negotiate. And listen, I'm serious. Listen to that guy's speech for yourself and don't rely on Wolf Blitzer or Candy Kane or Cokie Rogers or whoever these other people are. Don't rely on them. Listen to it yourself. It's 15 minutes long, and what the guy said was, we want trade with everybody. We just want fair trade. And here's how this works. You know how this works? You're as old, a lot of you are as old as I am, so you know it. Back in the 80s, we decided we want to let Japan build all our stereos and TVs. Because we want them, they make them cheaper, and that's what hell with all the people in Iowa that might have been making them at that point in time. Send them over to Japan, we'll get them cheaper. And then along about 1990, we decided, let's do the same thing with Mexico. Let's get rid of all of the people that make furniture in North Carolina. Let's get rid of all the people that sew blue jeans along the border, because those are low-paying jobs anyhow. So we just outsourced a big chunk of everything we do to Mexico with NAFTA. And then we come in the late 1990s, and all of a sudden we decide, you know what? Let's just get rid of all the computer programmers in America too. We can ship all of those jobs to India. And we did. And then here comes China a little later on, and we decide, you know what? We're just going to ship everything to you. So that's fine. What do we get out of this? We get a lot of cheap stuff. What do we not get out of this? They get all the jobs, they get all the wealth. That's the trade-off we have chosen. The American people have chosen and voted with their pocketbook. You betcha, pal. I want my stuff from China. I don't give a hooey whether it's made in Oklahoma or Iowa or anywhere else. All I hear Donald Trump saying is, we want to do the trade. We want to do business. We want to make money in this country. We want you to invest in our country. And here's the deal. Let's have trade, but how about this? Instead of you getting all the wealth and all the jobs and we getting cheap stuff back for it, how about if we get some of the wealth and some of the jobs and you get some of the wealth and some of the jobs? That's what I'm hoping. And he's the first president that's had the guts to say that, Republican or Democrat, forever. Nobody's ever said that before. And so, of course, China's going to be grouchy about it. Well, when you're used to stealing all the candy and all of a sudden it's like, do you want a pound of candy? Oh, you can still have 3/4 of a pound, but we want a quarter too. It's like, oh, no. We might sell our bonds. We get all the candy or we sell our bonds. So, we lost it all. We lost all the electronics to Japan. We lost a bunch of stuff to Mexico. We lost a bunch of stuff to India. We've lost a bunch of stuff to China. And all of these past presidents have said, you bet. I'm in favor of that. Let's export even more jobs out of here. Good idea, because cheap TVs is the most important thing to the American people. We'll see what he does. I don't know. As a negotiator, my guess is I would say, hey, I'm willing to tear it up. That's what you do as a negotiator. You tell people what your absolute lowest possible offer is. I remember at the time telling my parents, like, I really wanted a car, but I told them I was going to buy myself a motorcycle. And man, once I got enough money to buy a motorcycle, I laid that first offer out on the table. I'm thinking about buying myself a motorcycle. It was 60 days later, I had a $5,000 automobile, man, okay? I didn't have any interest in the motorcycle. So anyhow, I think the guy's, I don't know a thing about him. But just taking at face value, the words that I hear, I see a guy that's going to try. He said, we want a deal. We just want a good deal. Okay. Anybody else?
Questions? I've got one for you since you're talking about Saudi Arabia. Mark,
Yes.
They are going public. They're selling Saudi Aramco in an IPO fairly soon here in the next couple months.
Yes.
What's that going to do in Saudi Arabia?
Okay, thank you. I wanted to talk about that for a minute. So I'm the king of Saudi Arabia, and you're the citizens, and we're going bankrupt. I'm not. I still got hotels and jets and lots of good stuff, but you don't. And so we're running out of money, and that means I'm going to have a hard time paying you what you want. That's why I raised your subsidy on gasoline. Well, that's not enough, so what's the next step? When you get a little cash poor, have a garage sale. Okay? It's called an IPO, initial public offering. That's what the Crown Prince was going to do, is sell off a piece. I think it's 5% of Saudi Aramco, supposedly the biggest company on earth. And here's why that ties in. I've started, when they announced that, it's actually supposed to be in late December, okay? So it's out there. Late December 18. All of last year, they were talking about. Here's the thing. Oil is going to be as high as it can possibly get between now and that IPO. And that guy's figured out that all I got to do is declare war on somebody, and it goes up another $5. So between now and that IPO happening, you can trust that Saudi Arabia is going to be doing everything to get that up as high as possible. And that'd be fine. Here's where things go bad, is if he doesn't get the IPO, because they can't meet the accounting. Can you imagine being the SEC accountant reviewing the Saudi Aramco balance sheet? It's like, King, what's this about 7 gyroscopes you got, one for each plane, so that your bed's always flat no matter what the plane's doing? Is that a GAAP or a non-GAAP accounting issue? Is that recurring or not? Can you imagine that even passing SEC accounting? I can't. But we'll see. But that guy's reputation's on the line to have a successful IPO. And if something doesn't go good between now and then, and that IPO fails, then there's going to be a different ball game. I was like, okay, well, now what?
Will they just keep pushing the price of oil higher? Would they actually launch a war to drive it higher, do you think? Are they that
I don't know.
crazy?
I'm just explaining to you the motivations. I don't want to say that somebody would actually start a war. I'm just telling you what I've seen in the facts.
Okay.
I've seen one other fact along that way, just to diversify away from that, and it's the 10-year Treasury rate. Ever since Trump's become in office, people immediately, the 10-year Treasury rate, the interest rate started going up, thinking, wow, when he passes tax cuts and infrastructure, that's going to be super hot for the economy, and we're going to have a lot of inflation. And so right after he got elected, the 10-year Treasury started going up and up and up. And then all of a sudden, he made this tweet about Arnold Schwarzenegger's ratings on The Celebrity Apprentice. Do you remember that? And the 10-year Treasury dropped like a rock, okay? So what I found is that every day that Trump sounds like a president, the 10-year Treasury goes up. And every day Trump sounds like an idiot, the 10-year Treasury goes down, all right? I watch it. This is what I do. I don't trade baseball cards. I don't have Bitcoin. I don't have an opioid addiction, and I've never owned gold, all right? So what do I do at my time? I make spreadsheets on stupid stuff like this. I've got it all documented. So anyhow. Yeah,
I think that ought to be an index. I mean, that ought to be in every paper.
That Saudi IPO is a good question, though, because they're going to do everything, and they can't get too rowdy, because if you got too much uncertainty, then nobody's wanting to invest there because they're afraid, wow, there's too much war over there. I don't want to invest. So there's a balancing act of, well, every time I talk kind of feisty, it goes up, and I like that, and the market value of my company goes up with it. So, and I've cut production. They're doing everything they can. Yeah. Here's where things go ugly on that, is if for whatever reason they can't pass the SEC accounting or can't launch in London either, and then they turn around and blame it on Western capitalism and say, this is not my fault, this is an embarrassment, this is a humiliation to my country, and it's these Westerners and it's their fault. And so if we can't work together and make money at $75 a barrel, and I've got to cut your payments and I've got to raise your taxes and stuff, here's what we're going to do. We're going to produce everything we can. We'll drive the price of oil down to $15 or $20 and then just walk away and not look at it for 3 or 4 years. That, to me, would be the final alternative of a king that wanted to IPO, needed higher revenue, did everything he could, and then can't make it happen. Then the next step is, I got to put America out of business for real. Yeah. And his $40 stuff isn't for real. $15 is for real. And if you stay at $15 for 3 or 4 years, all the workers leave, and then it takes a long time to get the workers back in business. Yeah, that IPO is a big deal.
Okay.
Keep an eye on that. It's a good one. It's a good story to follow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question in the back. We got one in the back, way back there.
Yeah. Question is, so let's assume that they have a successful IPO. Yeah. Well, at that point, the pressure to have oil prices all that high isn't that big a deal anymore. But it's still 95% of his own company. So I don't see a situation where they would let oil drop dramatically after that. I think they have a huge financial motivation to keep oil as close to $90 a barrel as they can get. Because that way they don't have to go borrow money, they don't have to raise taxes, they don't have to cut subsidies. I think that's what they would like to see happen. That's a logical, good question. Okay, and I think...
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's give Dr. Dotzour a big hand.
Thanks for your kind attention.